I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar. You're here because you've either recently signed up to Thriveatwork, or you might be an organisation that has signed up a little while ago and could do with a little bit of a signpost or a refresh to the information and the actions to be completed in order to achieve foundation levels. So you're all here to find out a little bit more about those initial actions to complete for foundation level accreditation. As we go through today, our session is pretty informal, so feel free if you've got any questions to pop your hand up, or if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat box and I'll happily help you. This is the first of 2 webinars that we deliver as a team. The second webinar is delivered by my colleague Mitzi Donovan, and the aim of that webinar is to really support you to use the dashboard, the system that we use to enable you to upload your evidence and track your progress through accreditation. So my colleague runs a separate webinar that talks through the dashboard, sort of how to use it, how to log on, how to upload evidence, and also add any additional users that you might want to that may also be supporting you in achieving your accreditation. So after our webinar today, I'll send you an email that's got some information, some additional resources from today, but also the dates and how you can book a place on that next webinar. So I've got a couple of slides to share with you today, but feel free to ask any questions as we go through, and I'll be happy to help you. So the session today then, the aim of today's session, there are sort of 3 key objectives for our session, and the first one is to outline those foundation steps to accreditation. So really give you some clear signposting of what are those initial things that you need to complete in order to work towards accreditation for Thriveatwork. The session will also give you access, or really give you a bit of an outline to the resources that are available to help you to achieve accreditation. So the idea with Thrive is that you shouldn't be spending lots of time in trying to invent posters or spreadsheets or work out wording for policies and procedures. We've done all that hard work for you, and there are lots of different resources that we've got that can support you as you go through. And the final thing that we're going to sort of look at today is really kind of plan your next steps. So after you finish the webinar today, what is it you're going to go away to do? What are the things or the conversations that you're going to have, or the information that you need to sort of digest in order for you to take those initial steps and actions? So what are the foundation steps to accreditation? So when you signed up to Thriveatwork, you would have signed up to bronze accreditation, and that's our initial stage of accreditation. But what we found through our experience is a lot of organisations are in different parts on the wellbeing journey. And so when you are sort of unleashed onto bronze accreditation, everybody starts in different places and everybody needs something different. What we identified actually is there are a couple of key actions that completed in the beginning give you not only the best chance to complete your accreditation, but actually, as the name suggests, are those real sort of foundation steps for you as an organisation to really identify what are those health and wellbeing needs of your employees. You might have signed up to Thrive thinking, actually, we know exactly what the needs are of our employees, but actually some of the activities that you complete in these initial steps might enable you to gather some information or data from different places that maybe you wouldn't have thought before, that enable you to really start to put together that jigsaw pieces of the puzzle of what are our health and wellbeing needs for our employees. So that's why we have those foundation steps. So when you signed up to accreditation, you should have received this document here. So hopefully that looks quite familiar. If you haven't received this document, what I would suggest you do is have a bit of a search through in the junk folder of the email that signed up to Thrive. Sometimes it's sitting there, or sometimes your organisation might have a firewall and it's not, that email's not come through. But it's worth at this stage having a look through to make sure that you're getting the communications from us, to make sure that you're not going to miss any future ones. So have a look out for that if it hasn't appeared before now. And I would say this is your key document for your initial steps here. This contains all of the information that you need in order to complete your foundation level accreditation. And this document will help you to really start in the right direction. So it really does narrow down for you what are those key actions that you should be completing now that enables you to get in the right position, not only for accreditation, but really identifying what your organisation needs. It also enables you to develop a robust action plan. So for the foundation level, there are 5 steps that you need to complete. And those 4 initial steps of that really enable you to then gather information, analyse data, and really start to identify what are those key priorities. And from that, step 5 of foundation level is putting together an action plan. And that action plan can become your health and wellbeing strategy if you haven't got anything in place. But that action plan, really, the key is it enables you then to be really clear on what actions you need to take in order to complete your bronze accreditation. And this document then obviously enables you to achieve that bronze level accreditation for Thriveatwork. So foundation level has been designed for it to be completed within 90 days. But what I would say is those 90 days are a bit of a sort of benchmark, I suppose, as opposed to an absolute deadline. Every organisation is different. For some organisations, when they look at the foundation level, there may be lots of things and those actions that they can tick off now and start uploading the evidence to the dashboard. Whereas some organisations, you might have signed up to Thriveatwork because you know you need to do something, but you're not quite sure what. So for you, that 90 days might be a little bit longer in terms of being able to complete foundation, because it could be that there's some of these actions that might need to take a little bit more time to complete. You might need to have some discussions with some of the stakeholders in the business. You might need to implement some new things in order for you to complete some of those actions. So we say that the foundation level can be completed within 3 months, and that, I guess, is a bit of an average time to complete. But don't worry if you feel like you need to take a little bit extra. What I would encourage you to do is keep in touch with your accreditation officer to keep them updated on your progress. So let's have a quick look through these 5 steps that I keep mentioning, and then on the next slide we'll go through them in a little bit more detail. But step 1 is about establishing a record for recording sickness absence. We know that absence can be a very early indicator of how employees are feeling, and it's the kind of key driver for lots of our organisations, isn't it, to review our absence data. What is absence showing? How many people have we got off sick at the moment? So step 1 is about establishing a system for recording that sickness absence, and recording that sickness absence with reason for absence too. So this is where that 90 days of completion might hinder some people, because you might not have a consistent process in your organisation for people to record absence. That might need to be set up. So that's where those 90 days might take you a little bit longer. But that step 1 is making sure you've got that consistent process that's recording instances of absence and also the reason behind the particular absence. Step 2 for foundation is then gathering information and data. And we'll go through on the next slide. There are lots of different pieces of information that some of you might already have to hand. Some of you might need to think about how you collect that, or you might need to speak to other people in the business. But step 2 is really starting to think, if well-being and the health of our employees is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, What other pieces alongside absence is part of that puzzle? What other information have we got to hand that can help us build up a better picture of how people are and ultimately what people need, so what that wellbeing need is for your business? Following on from step 3, we then assess all that information we've gathered and we analyse that to identify what are some of those key trends there and what are some of those priorities that we've got within our business. So step 3 gets you to really have a look at what's that business data telling you, what's some data from a staff survey telling you, and also a bit of a gap analysis about how do we fare currently against the Thriveatwork standard? What do we need to do in order to complete? Step 4, we then start to communicate our findings to the wider business environment and thinking about some additional stakeholders in our business. And then step 5 is then identifying and really sort of translating from our trends and our priorities what our interventions can be. What's that practical thing that we're going to do in order to address that wellbeing need that we've identified? And again, communicating to the wider business team. And step 5, you leave step 5 having completed an action plan that is really signpost for you and for your business what those key priorities are and what your, sort of what action you're going to take as a result. So let's have a look at those 5 steps then in a little bit more detail. So step 1, as I mentioned, is about establishing a system for recording information. So this is how you sort of record sickness data in your business, and it might be a HR system that you use, it might be an Excel spreadsheet, you may have some other type of system that you use, and the key here is it needs to be a consistent system, and it needs to also demonstrate that you're collecting information as to the reason behind the individual's absence. So that's step 1. The evidence there is demonstrating that you've got a system. So for some of you, you might be able to complete this by lunchtime today, because you might be able to do a screenshot of you might have a system like Breathe HR, or you might use a particular spreadsheet that can be uploaded and you can complete step 1, because all we're asking you for here is to establish a system. If you don't have a system in place, we've got some resources that we'll mention shortly that will support you in doing that, some best practice, some guidance to enable you to set up that system. So along with absence, that can be a real sort of key indicator of what the needs of our employees and maybe some of those health and wellbeing challenges people have. We acknowledge there's lots of other information that can also help us build up that clearer picture for our organisation. So step 2 is about gathering some additional information and data to help us here. The first is to undertake a staff health and wellbeing survey. So this is really key in asking individuals how they are. And the survey is split in terms of asking you how you are from an employee's perspective, but also there's a set of questions for those that have line manager responsibility. The survey is free for you to use and is administered by us. It's confidential and your team will access it via a link that we issue you. We acknowledge that some of you might already run your own health and wellbeing survey, so it's worth having a sort of look at the questions of the survey. So we'll send those out after today's webinar, and reflecting on whether or not your own survey covers all of those themes that are within our own survey. Ours has been designed against the Thriveatwork theme, so it covers each of those elements that you go through for accreditation. But it could be some of your own survey does cover some of those themes, and so we can adjust the survey. There might be other means of gathering the information. You might want to run some focus groups or gather the information in a different way. But it's really important at this stage of accreditation that you do undertake some kind of health and wellbeing survey, because that's another layer of building that picture for us to identify how employees are feeling and what employees need. The second part of step 2 is then looking at additional organisation data that you might have to hand. So there are a couple of examples listed there. So you might have some information from occupational health. You might have some information from your EAP system, your employee assistance programme, if you have one, some usage figures. And you might have data sort of from your exit interviews. All of those, again, can really enable you to build up a more detailed picture of what your employees need. It's worth contacting your account manager if you've got an EAP system and asking them for usage figures. And whilst all of this needs to be confidential, and we don't want to know individual employee data, usage figures from EAP can be another real clear indicator of what are those services from your EAP system that you're paying for that your employees are tapping into. What is their need? You may find at the moment, if you've got sort of financial support as part of your EAP, you might find your employees tapping into that. And so actually it can be a really good indicator of understanding who sort of what additional support your employees feel they need. And that might also mean that you could do something proactive to support them. So step 2 is all about gathering some additional information that you've got there to help you sort of gain a better picture of what's going on in your organisation. Step 3 is then analysing that information. So we've gathered lots of pieces of data in step 2, and step 3 is then reflecting on all of that to identify what are some of our top causes of sickness absence. And it could be that there may be particular themes there. There may be lots of people off with stress or MSK issues, or there may be some other themes there of maybe particular teams off sick. It may be particular job roles or particular shifts that you have may be highlighting some sort of emerging trends there. We then, as step 3, also ask you to complete a bit of a gap analysis. So that's where it says complete your organisation self-assessment. So that's a gap analysis of where you are now and where you need to be in order to complete bronze accreditation for Thrive. So it's really reflecting on, right, we don't do anything at the moment for this and we need to, or we may have done some actions, we may have moved a little bit forward on these particular areas. And it's a really good exercise to do to again enable you to highlight what your focus should be moving forward. And the second point there on step 3, we ask you to calculate the current cost that poor health and wellbeing has on your organisation. And I would say from a couple of organisations I've worked with, this particular action sometimes can be quite informative or quite alarming for some organisations, because it really gives you that bottom line, how much is absence costing you? And it's looking at it not just from a sickness perspective, but also reflecting on things like turnover. There may be a link to why people are leaving the organisation and well-being. And I would say this point is really key in completing, and even more important if you're struggling to get any sort of senior management buy-in or key stakeholders are not bought into health and well-being. If we start to talk about money, that bottom line for our businesses, people will listen. So this is a really important exercise to complete. Step 4 is then communicating your findings. So really looking at what are those priorities that you've identified from what you've completed in those first 3 steps, and really communicating that with senior management. What I would suggest at this stage, if you haven't already, is maybe reflect on, is it worth for your organisation setting up some kind of wellbeing committee or wellbeing focus group, or really reflecting on who are those key stakeholders in the business, who are those people that can really champion this, but also who are those people that sort of need to make decisions here. Or it could be, for some of you, some other key stakeholders might be the people that have access to this data. So we're talking about sickness absence data, but you might not necessarily be the person that has the access to that. So it's really thinking about putting together some kind of wellbeing team, some collective to enable you to complete what needs to be completed, not only for accreditation, but I would say wider for really shifting some culture in our business about really raising the priority of wellbeing and putting it on the agenda. And then from step 4, you will obviously have established your wellbeing programme priorities, which then leads into step 5, where you develop your wellbeing plan. So you leave foundation stage having completed an action plan. So you know really clearly what actions you need to complete now in order to achieve bronze accreditation, but also really clear on who's going to be involved, and how you're going to communicate to the business. And this wellbeing plan not only becomes your plan for accreditation, I would also say it's something a bit wider than that. It's also your health and wellbeing sort of strategy for your organisation. And so for some of our organisations, we might not have anything like that now. So, you know, by the time you get to step 5, you'll have a really clear understanding of what your business needs, what your employees are needing and asking for, and a real clear idea of the things you can do to really support your employee health and well-being. So those are the steps to foundation. And I realise it's a lot of information to take in. And so we've got lots of resources to help you. So don't worry about having to remember all this, or worry about having to go and search the internet or be designing spreadsheets or posters or interventions to help you. We've got lots of resources available. So one of the first resources is that guidance document, the guidance notes. This, I would say, is your key document at the moment, a bit of bedtime reading for you. So I would say if you look after yourself and have a lunch break, or if you look after yourself and you are able to have a break here and there, why not make yourself a cup of tea, grab this document and have a look through, and have a reflect on what needs to be done, where you are now and what you need to do. So this is your first key resource. When you signed up to Thriveatwork, you would have also received this document too. So that wellbeing commitment document, it's quite a large document. It's about 200 pages long. So I would advise you not to print that one off. But what it does is it outlines the whole of Thriveatwork commitment. So all of the levels, bronze, silver and gold, and gives you a real sort of insight into the additional themes that you might come across at silver and gold, and the additional information and evidence that's required for the accreditation. So I would say if you're going to print one off, print off the one on the right, the foundation level first steps, and the bigger commitment document, just maybe look at that on screen because it's quite large. So in terms of those foundation level first steps, those guidance notes, what you'll find is each of the pages are structured in the same way. So don't worry too much about the detail of the words here, but I just wanted to highlight to you the structure of the page to really show for you, you know, for each step that you complete, there's some support information for you and how you can use that. So the first section that you'll come across is called What You Need to Do. So this section really outlines to you the criteria for the accreditation. So it'll break down sort of what's required. The second section is called Why This is Important for You. So this section really sort of justifies why we're asking for what we're asking, or also justifying how is that part of the wellbeing picture? What does it give us? Why is it important that we should be thinking about this? And I would say that this particular section, if you're struggling to get people on board with what you're doing, you know, some key stakeholders are really not engaged in conversations, come back to this section actually, because it will give you a little bit of that justification of why we're wanting to look at sickness trends, for example. So it really gives you that additional sort of justification. So that's a really useful section. The third section that you'll see in those guidance notes is called How You Can Achieve This. And if you're anything like me, I'm pretty practical. I like to know what I need to do. And in this section here, you will find our links there to the practical tools or techniques that can help you, and a bit of a breakdown of what you need to do. If you have a look on the screen there, you can see that personnel data and record keeping are underlined and they're a different colour. So if you open this document up on a laptop, you will find that those are hyperlinks. So if you click into it, it will take you directly to that particular resource. So this document is interactive when you open it up. I would also say at the end of the document, there are a couple of pages that really sort of summarize the key resources for you, and again they're live links as well that you can click to, and that can be found at the end of that guidance document. And then the final section is called How You Can Show You've Achieved This, and then that brings it all together and outlines to you what is the piece or pieces of evidence that you upload to the dashboard to demonstrate that you've completed this, and it will also signpost to you where you need to upload that on the dashboard. So that document is the foundation level document, and you will have been emailed that when you signed up to the programme. The next sort of key resource for you is our toolkit. So let me just share my screen for you now and show you that toolkit. There we go. So I hope you can all see that toolkit here. So I've signed into our Thriveatwork dashboard. Mine might look a little bit different to you because I've got an administrator dashboard. But when you log onto your dashboard, your screen should look like this. And so it will have the different levels of accreditation across here. And the bit that I want to sort of signpost you to today is this link here where it says Thriveatwork Toolkit. Now, this is the toolkit that for any stage of your accreditation, this is where you can find all the resources to support you. So when I click into that, because I'm in foundation level, if you scroll down and then click into the key theme for foundation is called Enablers of Health, it then gives you a breakdown of the different criteria that you will complete as part of foundation. When you click onto the plus next to it, it will then give you some supplementary information about that particular criteria, and it will also give you some links to additional information and resources to help you. So along with that guidance document, the toolkit is there for you to help. So if you look here, there's an Excel spreadsheet that helps you calculate the cost to your business of sickness, absence and turnover, and it breaks it all down for you. So you're not having to search for documentation, you're not having to invent your own resources, everything's there for you. While I'm on this page, I am just going to download the Thriveatwork action plan. So I mentioned as part of step 5, you also complete a really key action is completing an action plan. And what that action plan does is that enables you then to identify what are those next steps for you in order to complete the rest of bronze accreditation. And this is where the action plan really comes into its own. I'm not going to go through too much of the detail of the action plan here, because again, I think it's really useful for you after our session today to go and seek that out and have a good look through. But the action plan has been designed against our Thriveatwork criteria for you to track your progress and also use it a bit like a project plan. So you'll find there are a couple of tabs along the bottom. The first tab is some comprehensive guidance notes that outline for you how to use the spreadsheet at any point, and also showing you how you can track your progress. There's a tab for foundation level, so that enables you then to track your own progress through foundation. And there are 4 subsequent tabs. So those tabs then outline and become your action plan for your health and wellbeing strategy to complete your accreditation, but also, gives you that real sort of direction of travel for your next steps after foundation. So it's all sort of listed against the criteria that you need to complete. And here what's really important is it's got sections for you to write down what action that needs to be completed, the dates that it needs to be completed, and also who's leading on that. So who's going to take the responsibility. And then there's progress at the top for you to track how far along you are and when you're near to completion. So that action plan, the link can be found either from the toolkit or it can be found at the back of your foundation guidance document. And that's a really sort of important document, I would say, for you to seek out now. If we pop back to the slides, so we've gone through the toolkit and we've gone through that guidance document. They are really key resources. Some additional resources to signpost you to that I will send out to you after this session is a poster. It might be worth, if in your workplace, if you've got people back on site, to raise the awareness of Thriveatwork. We've got some posters you're able to print off. We've also got lots of videos and case studies of organisations like yourself that have already gone through Thriveatwork. And I'll send the link through to you, and it might be worth sharing those too with your organisation to raise the awareness of Thrive and also raise the benefits that you can get from the programme. It could be that you use those as part of a team meeting. You might have some intranet pages that you want to embed those videos on. It's really reflecting on, what's a bit of a marketing campaign to raise the awareness of Thrive with your employees. So those are the 5 steps to accreditation, and each of those 5 steps will have a couple of pages within the guidance document. And all of the steps are designed to enable you to really reflect on what is it your business needs. So what is some sort of current data and information showing you? What are your employees telling you through your health and wellbeing survey? What is the cost of absence and turnover to your business, and really identifying what are your health and wellbeing priorities now to complete accreditation. Once you complete those first 5 steps, we acknowledge that actually you will have done some really good work. And so we send you a certificate to acknowledge that, as well as a logo for you to use on social media and email. And when you progress through the subsequent levels of accreditation, there's also equivalent for bronze, silver and gold. So I realise I've given you lots of information there. And so it's over to you for a couple of minutes really to reflect on what are your next steps. So what are you going to do as a result of completing this webinar? What are some of those things that we've talked about through those steps that you feel actually might be a bit of a challenge and might need a little bit more of a reflection? So I'd like to thank you for your time today. Please keep in touch with us as a team, and we look forward to supporting you through your accreditation. Thank you.